Tonight's program of music features some songs found in the Isaiah Thomas Broadside Ballad Collection. Our founder, Isaiah Thomas, worked with a Boston printer, Nathaniel Coverley, to collect as many cheap, popular, one-sheet songs as they could find. Eventually, Thomas collected nearly 300 of them, and then bound them into 4 volumes. When Thomas presented his collection to the American Antiquarian Society, he wrote that he had the broadsides bound up for preservation to show what articles of this kind are in vogue with the vulgar at this time, 1814. We might say Thomas was creating the early Republic's version of Billboard's Top 200. These ballads must have also held an important personal meaning for Thomas. Isaiah learned his trade of printing at the elbow of Zechariah Fowle, a Boston printer of cheap pamphlets and broadsides. The young Thomas was often sent out into the streets to peddle these ballads for a penny apiece. The very first thing that Thomas typeset when he was just 7 years old was just such a broadside. It was a bawdy song entitled The Lawyer's Pedigree. I'll let you think about that one for a minute. Thomas himself recorded that the job took much longer than it should have, 2 days. But then he knew only the letters. He had not yet been taught how to put them together to spell words. Thomas has preserved a copy of The Lawyer's Pedigree, and it is part of our collection today. No wonder then that Thomas held such high regard for these cheap, popular, often dramatic, and sometimes licentious songs that tell us so very much about everyday life as America fought its second revolution from Great Britain. This music will be expertly performed for you by David Hildebrand, a scholar and musician who specializes in early American music. He holds an MA in musicology from George Washington University and a PhD from Catholic University. David performs, consults, and lectures widely. This spring, he produced a 1-hour public radio special on 1812-era music and will appear on an upcoming episode of PBS's History Detectives. He is the featured performer on Anthem to air on American Public Television in 2013. David also teaches at the Peabody Conservatory. He and his wife, Ginger, have released 6 CD recordings, and much of what you will hear tonight will soon constitute their 7th. And we are selling some of his recordings and materials here for sale this evening. So please, welcome David Hildebrand.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. I'm sorry to say The Lawyer's Pedigree is not on the program tonight, but had I known, I would have prepared it in advance. It's truly an honor to be here. The spirit of this place is just incredible. And the ideals of not just preserving our history, but sharing it, teaching it, introducing young people to it, supporting scholarly activities, interacting with others. In that spirit, we're dedicating this program to Kate Van Winkle Keller, a member of the American Antiquarian Society, former council member, extremely active and indeed revered scholar in early American music and dance. I had the great privilege to meet Kitty first in 1987, 25 and a half years ago, and in the years since then, have been the great beneficiary of her mentorship, her scholarship, support, and encouragement. In many ways, this concert could never be possible without the background work that has been done by Kate Keller and by her husband Robert Keller, both of whom are here this evening with us. Robert Keller picked up where the American Antiquarian Society left off in 1976 with Irving Lowen's catalog of songsters. Bob has brought it up to the year 2010, and it's an online database that we make available free of charge for research. So, Kitty, thank you. It would be tempting to try to summarize what the War of 1812 was all about before starting, but I'd rather just get straight into the music and let the music tell you its own story. A little bit of background first. In my view, historical documents, as incredibly important as they are even more valuable when used in conjunction with art and music. We have examples of both. This is the sea battle, famous sea battle, in which the Constitution, thereafter known as Old Ironsides, vanquished the Guerriere, and Isaac Hull became such an American hero. The manuscript dance tune in the upper right of this opening slide is Hull's Victory, a nice tune that people would dance to. There were also songs about Isaac Hull. But let's say a minute, let's give a minute now to the context of music in 1812. Obviously, musical culture doesn't change immediately. We need to look back into the colonial period just a tad. To do so, we think of the class divisions. Upper class Americans were able to purchase instruments that were not affordable to the vulgar, if I want to use the term tonight. And so we see here, perhaps not a typical, but a lovely gathering of mid-18th century gentlemen playing for their own amusement on a hammered dulcimer in the lower center, a slide trumpet, 2 violins, an oboe, and my favorite instrument in the upper left is the rum punch bowl. Amongst those not so wealthy, music figured quite importantly as well. Here we have a rather rare depiction of the Pennsylvania Dutch. We think of as being rather staid, really cutting loose here. I don't know if you can see, but the fiddlers at the table, one of them is so excited he's holding his bow up in the air. They have glasses of wine on the table, and the dancers are certainly frolicking with a good spill. So regardless of your social class, dancing is hugely important. Just the way you dress and the kind of dances you do somewhat vary. Into the 19th century, of course, music figures prominently in private homes, dancing for fun on an amateur basis, in informal music in taverns. Back to the upper class, though. These were the folks who could afford to learn how to read musical notation and to import fine copper-plate engraved music, such as on the left, from a collection of Scottish tunes for harpsichord and voice. On the right, sheet music by 1812 is starting to drop in price, and eventually, as pianos take on more of a role in American society, and guitars as well will become popularized, sheet music plays a greater and greater role. In our period, however, the sheet music is geared toward really just the top few percent. And so if we want to learn about the War of 1812, in this coincidence, the sheet music I've chosen here is Perry's Victory, which is a tune, which based on a popular tune, and lots of people knew the song as well as the wealthy who could play the sheet music. Well, we already heard a little bit about Isaiah Thomas's presses right up on the next floor over that direction, down broadsides that brought back from Boston this little taste of life with the common people in Boston 200 years ago. Music is also preserved then, not just in the words of the broadsides. By the way, I don't know if it was mentioned, but the broadside, as you'll see, does not include musical notation. It is words only, usually with a tune and attribution. So how do people know the tunes? Well, many people grew up with them, they learn them, often they'll copy them down. Here's a nice little Irish jig called St. Patrick's Day in the Morning. You'll hear Perry's Victory sung to this melody in just a minute. So here's a real broadside, and here's the beginning of our concert. And here's the beginning of the explanation of what led us to war. Sailors' rights and free trade are the two most cited reasons back then. The economics, though, of course, were the most important. Thomas Jefferson, trying to protect our interests as trade partners with England and with France, we had very little chance, very little hope to play on an even playing field with those large countries. The Brits would freely board our ships, impress our sailors, and take them into their own navy. And so Jefferson came up with a terrible idea of imposing a trade embargo. Let's hear about the embargo. To a tune that was known not just to the Freemasons. Notice it's mentioned that it is set to the tune of "Come, Let Us Prepare." It's a Masonic song. But it's also a melody that was known by lots of other people. These verses then will address the impact that this horrible embargo in 1808 had on Americans. Not just to the sailors, but to the fishermen, to the farmers, to the common folks, and how they blamed it on the politicians. There's some very clever twists of language here in this piece. The embargo, my favorite new song. Dear sirs, it is wrong to demand a new song. I have let all the breath I can spare go. With the muse I've conferred, but she won't say a word and keeps laughing about the embargo. Our great politicians, those dealers in visions, on paper to all length they dare go. But when called to decide, like a turtle, they hide in their own pretty shell the embargo. In the time that we try to put out Britain's eye, I fear we shall let our own pair go. Yet still we're so wise we can see with French eyes, and then we shall like the embargo. For a French privateer can have nothing to fear. She may load and may here and may there go. Their friendship is such and we love them so much, we let them slip through the embargo. Now our ships all in motion once lightened the ocean. They sailed and returned with a cargo. Now doomed to decay, they have fallen a prey to Jefferson, worms, and embargo. Lest Britain should take a few men by mistake, who under false colors may dare go, we're manning their fleet with our tars who retreat from poverty, sloth, and embargo. What a fuss we have made about rights and free trade, and swore we'd not let our own share go. Now we can't for our souls bring a hake from the shoals. 'Twas a breach of the 20th embargo. And our farmers so gay how they galloped away. 'Twas money that made the old mare go. But now she won't stir for the whip or the spur, till they take off her clog, the embargo. Thus Tommy destroys a part of our joys, will not let the beautiful fair go. They all will contrive to keep commerce alive. There's nothing they hate like embargo. Since rulers design to deprive us of wine, 'tis best that we now have a rare go. Then each to his post to see who will do most to knock off the blocks of embargo. Now I saw some of you carefully following the text. I don't know how well my words matched, because I'm actually singing from another version of this, published in Philadelphia in a magazine called The Portfolio the same year. Because you see, these songs, they spread like wildfire, not just through the broadsides, but in newspapers, in magazines. They expressed the way many people felt. Well, the minute a song like this comes out, often there will be an answer to it, someone who feels just the opposite. I won't bother you with the death of the embargo song that occurs after this is done. I think we've got the point across. But just in those verses, see, I'm a proponent of teaching American history through music. You could have a textbook with little bullet points. Well, you know, the sailors couldn't really go out to sea, the farmers couldn't get what they needed, blah, blah, blah. You know, bullet points. Or you can have these really clever lines. And I'm glad you chuckled at my favorite one about our ships in motion and have fallen a prey to Jefferson, worms, and embargo. Well, it's time now to sing about this most famous battle between the Constitution and the Guerriere. And to do so, I want to make this clear. For the most part, the accompanying of songs and ballads with guitars is a much more modern thing. The few guitars that show up in early America are not folk instruments. They are objects of art. They're very expensive. What I have in my left hand is a reproduction of a Baroque style guitar, or what they call a Spanish guitar, in use in America from the late 1600s through the 1700s, and then into this 1812 period, going into transition from this 5-course or 10-string instrument to a 6-course single-string instrument here. And so when I use a guitar to accompany these ballads, I'm not sure often which to use, or whether to use one at all. I think most of the time they were done just with voice and not with guitar accompaniment. But this one could stand it because it's a Yankee duet. Now, I'll invite you to join me toward the end of the program in a Yankee Doodle where it would be great if you could sing each chorus. all the way through. It would be the Battle of Baltimore. It would be a great song to do together. But this Yankee Doodle, the choruses change. And so I think that it's really best. Here's the Isaiah Thomas broadside of what we're about to do together. I think it would be best if you sang just the first 2 lines of the chorus. Everyone knows the words, right? Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. But if you'll stop there, I'll take over because each chorus changes and comments on the different verses as we sing the American Constitution frigate's engagement with the British frigate Guerriere. The fine print, which, after an action of 25 minutes, surrendered and being completely shattered, was blown up. Do you like that, Cub Scouts? This is good stuff. It's good. Blown up, being impossible to get her to port. Okay, so just to practice, see if you can do just the first half of the chorus and stop. It's hard. Here we go. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. Good. Okay, follow these words. And keep in mind, this is how Americans got the news of the war. This is what helped to spur us on our naval victories. God knows we did horribly on land. We tried to invade Canada, and I won't even tell you what happened on all occasions. But luckily at sea, we won most of our battles. So here's how Americans were proud of themselves during the war. Come jolly lads, ye hearts of gold, come fill your cans and glasses. Be fun the order of the day, a health to all the lasses. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. As hot as British folks can sup, we'll give it to them brandy. The Constitution long shall be the glory of our Navy, for when she grapples with a foe, she sends her to old Davy. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. We'll let the British know that we at fighting are quite handy. Not long ago 5 British ships unto her gave a chaser, but spite of all their quips and cranks, she beat 'em in the racer. Though 10 to 1 the Yankee boys at fighting are quite handy. At length the British ship Guerriere quite proudly came across her, and Dacre said in half an hour in air he'd surely toss her. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. He counted chickens ere they hatched because their eggs were handy. But soon, alas, poor Dacre's found that he was quite mistaken, and thought he got himself well off by saving of his bacon. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. The Yankee boys for fighting first are always quick and handy. And now begins the bloody fray, the balls flew thick and hot, sir. In half an hour the job was done, the Guerriere went to pot, sir. The British didn't like the fun and quit soon as 'twas handy. Now here's a health to Captain Hull and all his noble cruisers. Should he choose to fight again, his lads will see him through, sirs. For ridding British ships on shore, brave Hull is quite the dandy. Now safe in Boston port we've moored, our girls with smiles shall meet us. And every true American with a loud huzzah shall greet us. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. Our brave commander now will toast in punch and wine and brandy. I think Yankee Doodle probably makes up about 200 different sets of lyrics in American musical history. Art Schrader, who did a lot of work on this broadside collection, and whose work Kate Keller followed up on, completed. Art Schrader was a collector of Yankee Doodles. I don't know that he ever came up with a final number. Somewhere over 150? More than 150. Okay. My favorite one when I was a kid watching television in the 1960s was Roger Ramjet. You know that? Roger Ramjet, he's our friend, the hero of our nation. For his adventures, just be sure and stay tuned to our station. Okay, anyway. So, the Constitution, of course, this great battle of the Guerriere, made Eisenhower an immediate American hero. But the War of 1812 also caused us to remember some of our heroes of previous wars, particularly the Barbary Wars, the Wars of Tripoli. And the biggest hero of that time, of course, was Stephen Decatur. Decatur, returning home to America in late 1804, and by coincidence, actually, being the subject of Francis Scott Key's first song, to a melody that I recognize. More on that later. What I would like to sing to you, though, is a resetting of a popular revolutionary tune called Liberty Tree. Liberty Tree, again, an older melody even before the Revolution, taken on by Thomas Paine in 1776, and circulated and popularized as a song encouraging our revolting from Great Britain. So that melody was still in Americans' minds. And I'd like to share it with you next. Decatur and Navy, to the tune of Liberty Tree.
Let glory proclaim to the hills of the west the triumphs of freedom afar. Our song be Decatur and liberty blessed, huzzah for the brave and the war. The gallant commander and aid his brave band rejoice at the sight of the foe. 3 cheers give the signal, each heart and each hand conspires to strike the firm blow. Then furious the cannon's fierce thundering roar, death speedily follows the blaze. The dead and the dying were covered with gore, while freedom the contest surveys. Sweet goddess that guides us to glory and fame and rides to the terrible blast. And now to Decatur a glorious name, that long as his country shall last. The fierce Macedonian soon yields to her foe, she yields to the gallant and brave. Success to our sailors wherever they go, and in death sweet peace to their grave. Huzzah to the brave who triumphantly ride and traverse the boisterous sea. Columbia's glory, her honor and pride, and freedom's fair bulwark shall be. Then the tars of Columbia were born to be brave, their birthright is liberty blessed. To shield it from insult, from ruin to save, shall long be the pride in each breast. Then hail to our navy, all hail in a bumper, Decatur, Jones, Porter, and Hull. May Rogers sing meet with the fierce roving plumber, and drum his old friend Johnny Bull.
So there's some terminology here that we'll need to explain a little bit. Johnny Bull is the way that Americans collectively referred to the English, to the Brits, to the nation as a whole, as well as to the soldiers and the sailors that came over to do us harm. Yankee, of course, is the way we refer to ourselves. And in a moment, we'll sing a song praising ourselves as Yankee tars, a tar being a nickname for a sailor. Let's think a little bit, though, about what sailors liked to do in their spare time. They loved to dance. Again, going back to the wonderful days of television in the 1960s, Popeye the Sailor Man. What did he like to dance to? The Sailor's Hornpipe, which is an 18th century dance. What I'd like to share with you next, though, are a couple of very important tunes, just tunes themselves. Not any words attached, but just the melodies. First, the President's March. When James Madison finally put the last signature on the Treaty of Ghent in the Octagon House in Washington in 1815, before the end of the war, a young slave in his house ran down, grabbed his fiddle to the streets of Washington, and played the President's March. It's a very important symbolic American tune. Now, by that time, the President's March had also been picked up and words were put to it. Those words are Hail Columbia. You've ever heard Hail Columbia, Happy Land? That's where it came from. President's March, originally written by Hessian, that Washington captured at Trenton in 1776. I'll follow then this important march tune with a lovely American composed tune, Sackett's Harbor, successfully defended twice against British attack at the east end of Lake Ontario. Sackett's Harbor has its own tune. So. because we have another sing-along. This one is called Yankee Tars. Now we know what a Yankee, of course, we've always known what a Yankee is, but a tar and a sailor. What's interesting about this text is it is so Amerocentric. It's unbelievable as it unfolds verse by verse. It's basically saying, when the universe was first born, in mind was one place. And back then, Americans referred to themselves both as Americans and as Columbians. I just played Hail Columbia. Washington, D.C. is District of Columbia. We don't really do that anymore. We don't think of ourselves actively as Columbians, but people did back then. So these verses then encapsulate the birth of this incredible country, and then it marches through. Remember I told you, I would let the songs tell you the story of the war. It marches through this process of our need to build a stronger Navy, to protect our shipping, of the War of Tripoli, the hero of Tripoli, the Constitution and Guerriere, and it ends up with just a marvelous verse. For this piece, since it's based on an extremely old English tune called A Cobbler There Was, or Derry Down, I'll use the older guitar. Your part goes like this. With a down, 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 Derry down. It's hard. Try it. With a down, 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 Derry down. Now this is really what we call a convivial song at this time. This is a song in the way that Benjamin Franklin used to sit around in a tavern or a private home, have somebody leading the verses and everybody eating and drinking and joining in the chorus. So although we're not eating or drinking, we can't do that in reading. Please do join in the chorus. And listen to these marvelous words. These were published in a songster, a small bound collection of sort of miniature broadsides, if you will. But the songster was published in Boston in 1813 under the title Columbia Naval Melody. When nature, kind goddess, first formed this big ball,
In fanciful mood, good and ill she bestowed, assured that she never could satisfy all. She one favorite land with all blessings endowed, with a down, 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 very down. She called it Columbia and swore before Jove that the rest of the world for this country should toil. Through Asia and Africa and Europe her love sought for us choicest gifts from each clime and each soil, with a down, 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 very down. Our country she made the asylum of laws, the refuge of liberty, science, and arts, then a surety for truth and humanity's cause. She planted our bosom with true Yankee hearts, with a down, 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 very down. She then with these words made the welcome to ring. You have now every blessing that I do bestow. 'Tis yours to preserve, and in navy's the thing, that your rights shall protect from each insolent foe, with a down, 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 very down. She said, and 'twas done. Then the Barbary shore saw such daring as rivaled antiquity's name. But the war of the rights of our tars gives once more to our tars a fair field to outdo ancient fame, with a down, 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 very down. See the cruisers of Britain with threatening air sweep the seas and defy us with thundering noise. The Guerriere, her name, on her mainsail so fair, cries death and destruction to all Yankee boys, with the down, 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 very down. But bold Captain Hull and his bold Yankee tars proved her masts were all heartless and heartless her men, and the Guerriere soon bade a farewell to all wars. Justice triumph, and justice shall triumph again, with a down, 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 very down. Then the hero of Tripoli next met the foe, and 'tis still the same story told over again. Of fighting they scarcely made out a good show, when their masts were all gone, killed or wounded their men, with a down, 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 very down. 'Tis thus Yankee tars shall their country protect, and the rights of the seas on a sure basis place. The vauntings and threatenings of Britain be checked, and a navy and commerce our country shall grace, with the down, 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 very down, with the down, 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 very down. I was so thrilled this weekend when I showed up for the conference that was held on Saturday. On Friday night there was a wonderful keynote address by Alan Taylor, and then through the day Saturday we had plenary sessions and some breakout sessions, and it was really kind of fun. And I was delighted to march over where you will be able to, after the program, go raise the screen, and in the display cases off to my left are some lovely artifacts, letters, some printings, and some cartoons. And I was thrilled to find that two of those cartoons fit in exactly with what I was planning on doing on this particular concert. What we see here, after all of the victories at sea, when we roll into the year 1814, we had a certain problem. That was that the British were done with Napoleon, and they had all these spare troops and ships to send over to give us a little bit of a lesson. Well, they gave us a lot of a lesson in Washington, D.C. Barely defended a losing battle in Bladensburg, Maryland. The British freely marched into our nation's capital and burned the White House. Before doing so, though, they sat down at the table. The myth is it was still spread with dinner. I doubt that was the fact. I think that people had enough time to scoot out. But the Brits did find the wine cellar in the White House. And the Brits sat at the president's house in our nation's capital and drank wine to the king in 1814. Think about that. So here's a cartoon showing a little intercourse between the Americans and the Brits, and the fire in the background. My song is called James Madison, My Joe.
And to appreciate the choice of the melody for this song against James Madison. By the way, many people referred to this by 1814 as Mr. Madison's War. He got us into it. It was his fault. Few people wanted war, especially up here in New England. Oh my gosh, you guys were upset. Now down in my part of the country, in the South, and to the West, of course, Henry Clay and the Warhawks, others who saw profiteering and benefits of warfare. Our nation was really torn. It was a civil war, as Ellen Taylor lectured about here from tonight. So my song then goes back to an older Scottish tune called John Anderson, My Joe. In fact, it's a tune that Robert Burns published, or co-published, I should say. And John Anderson, My Joe is a song about a lovely old Scottish couple, well over the hill, where she's looking over at her husband, John Anderson, and sort of patting him on the back and saying, "Oh, your dancing days are done, and you was a sweet husband, but you aren't quite as strong as you used to be." And that's how Americans were feeling about James Madison. So somebody came up with a brilliant idea. James Madison, John Anderson. Let's make a James Madison My Joe. This is a scathing song. You think at 9 o'clock the candidates are going to go after each other on television tonight? That's nothing compared to what these guys were doing at the end of the war. So, listen to these words, please. James Madison, My Joe, published in the Patriotic Songster in 1816.
James Madison, my Joe, Jim, I wonder what you mean. You proclamate in chair of state a vision or a dream. The war you did begin, Jim, and why did you do so? You should have found some better ground, James Madison, my Joe. James Madison, my Joe, Jim, we find your plans have failed. Ere this you know that deadly woe and taxes you've entailed upon this happy land, Jim, you brought disgrace also that you can't cure nor we endure. James Madison, my Joe. James Madison, my Joe, Jim, 'twas when you first began. The world did say, and well might they, that you was not the man. You was a Duke of France, Jim, and Jefferson also. With a gunboat fleet you'd Britons beat. James Madison, my Joe. Our capital you lost, Jim, much wealth with it likewise. Your fame is fled, your honors dead, your minions we despise. In wisdom you're deficient, Jim, and energy also. Most manfully you ran away. James Madison, my Joe. James Madison, my Joe, Jim, you've winged your flight with speed. With courage rare you knew not where you drove your lank steed. While British troops were feasting, Jim, on wine and ale you know. You weary fled to seek a bed, James Madison, my Joe. Well, I fain will not advise you, Jim, where you must next retreat. In Carter's Mount there is a fount at Thomas's country seat, where you may rest secure, Jim, likewise your friend Monroe, free from all harms and of war's alarms, James Madison, my Joe. James Madison, my Joe, Jim, no longer we'll withhold. You bartered all at Bona's call, our liberties and gold. A patriot shall supplant you, Jim, and he shall rule in style, while you and Tom find asylum on Little Elba's Isle. And if you look, I mean, this is how parallel the musical expression and the cartoon expression. If you go and you read the little word bubbles here above the cartoon characters, they're saying the same things. Are you going to end up on Elba's Isle? Are you in cahoots with Napoleon? And etc. So, music then criticized Madison specifically, critiqued the war. In a way, it also brought us to war. I mentioned Henry Clay. And a song in 1808, in this rough period after the embargo, and after what was known as the Chesapeake and Leopard affair, the British ship
forcefully took 4 sailors off an American ship off the coast of the Chesapeake. Excuse me. It was a tough time. It was a scary time. And those who wanted war could use music for that purpose as well. American Star. 2 tunes associated with my favorite one to use for this is called Humors of the Glen. And Americans knew this tune from theaters for many years. Very powerful words here as well.
Come strike the bold anthem, the war dogs are howling. Already they eagerly snuff up their prey. The red clouds of war o'er our forests are scowling. Soft peace spreads her wings and flies weeping away. The infants affrighted cling close to their mothers. The youth grasp their swords for the combat prepare. While beauty weeps fathers and lovers and brothers who rush to display the American star. While beauty weeps fathers and lovers and brothers who rush to display the American star. Come blow the shrill bugle, the loud drum awaken, the red rifle seize, let the cannon deep roar. No heart with pale fear or faint doubtings be shaken, no slave's hostile foot leaves a print on our shore. Shall mothers, wives, daughters, and sisters left weeping, insulted by ruffians, be dragged to despair? Oh no, from her hill the proud eagle comes sweeping, and waves to the brave the American star. Oh no, from her hills the proud eagle comes sweeping, and waves to the brave the American star. The spirits of Washington, Warren, Montgomery, look down from their clouds with bright aspect serene. Come soldiers of tear, and a toast to their memory, rejoicing they'll see us as once they have been. To us the high boon by the gods has been granted, to spread the glad tidings of liberty far. Let millions invade us, we'll meet them undaunted, and conquer or die by the American star. Let millions invade us, we'll meet them undaunted, and conquer or die by the American star. That third verse I sang shows up in Sacred Harbor hymnals, the shape-note singing traditions of mid-19th century America, but continuously carried on to today. Includes American Star, that third verse about Washington, Warren, and Montgomery. Think about that in church. Okay, well, we're going to go way back in time for a minute, because that's what people in Boston were doing in 1814. When researching, working together to create a music book, a dance book, and a CD about music related to George Washington, we came upon a song, very popular, extremely popular in the American Revolution, called War in Washington, or General Washington, to the tune British Grenadiers. Many of you know that. There's a verse in the song for George Washington. It says, it goes, fired with that great idea, our father's shades would rise, to view the stern detention, the gods desert their skies, and wolf mid hosts of heroes, superior bending down, cry out with eager transport, well done, brave Washington. This is General Wolfe, James Wolfe, who lost his life at the Battle of Quebec in 1759. Now, arguably, James Wolfe was as British as they come. So was George Washington in the French and Indian Wars, right? I mean, he was a British subject in the French and Indian Wars. Isn't it interesting then, in this American patriotic song, right after the Declaration of Independence, that we take on Wolfe as the hero who's giving Washington his approval? Now,
What does this have to do with 1812? Isaiah Thomas collected the ballad of James Wolfe in Boston 200 years ago. So Americans, not only were they so proud of Wolfe that there were at least 2 songs that date probably very close to his death in 1759. There's this lovely painting done in 1770. There were stage reenactments of the death of Wolfe in cities like Baltimore, Philadelphia, Boston in the 1790s, 1800s. And then here in the AAS, in the Isaiah Thomas collection, we find the death of Wolfe. Americans were conscious of their history, proud of their history. I'd like to share this with you now. Excerpts. Some of these ballads, they go much, much longer than I'm doing tonight. So maybe not all 14 verses in this one. Now, this is very much a ballad. This is very much an American melody, an American ballad. And the style in which it's done is much more of what we think of as sort of the folk ballads that survive in Appalachia today, as opposed to some of the topical ballads that were being printed in the cities as news was unfolding. In fact, this song is still sung today down in Appalachia. Cheer up your hearts, young men, let nothing fright you. Be of a gallant mind, let that delight you. Let not your courage fail till after trial, nor let your fancy move at the first denial. One day a gallant youth did cross the ocean to free America from her invasion. He landed at Quebec with all his party, the city to attack, both brave and hearty. Brave Wolfe drew up his men in a form most pretty, on the plains of Abraham before the city. There just before the town, the French did meet them, and with double numbers they resolved to beat them. The drums did loudly beat, and the colors were flying. The purple gore did stream, as men lay a-dying. Then shot from off his horse fell this brave hero, and we lament his loss in weeds of sorrow. Well, the French began to break, their ranks went a-flying. Brave Wolfe then seemed to wake as he lay a-dying. He lifted up his head as the gun still rattled, and to his army said, "How goes the battle?" Well, his aide-de-camp replied, "'Tis in our favor. Quebec with all her pride, we soon shall have her. She will fall into our arms with all her treasure." "Oh, then," replied brave Wolfe, "I die with pleasure." The other cartoon that caught my fancy made me especially glad that I brought my mug. Because the words of our next song mimic this very same critique. "Hey, Johnny Bull, how would you like a sip of Perry?" It rhymes with sherry. And I wish I could read the details of the Johnny Bull on the left. And basically he's saying, you know, I'll take gin, I'll take beer, I'll take French champagne, I'll drink anything, just don't make me drink Perry. Because Commodore Oliver Hazard Perry made the British fleet at Lake Erie have a very bad day on September the 17th in the morning. You may recall the manuscript I showed you in the presentation, a copy called St. Patrick's Day in the Morning. Well, September the 10th in the morning, boy, that sure calls for St. Patrick's Day in the morning. So somebody put that tune, which is an Irish jig, very hard to sing, by the way. Very clever words, though. We'll sing now against. We'll be singing first about Queen Charlotte. Now, Queen Charlotte was the name of the flagship of the British fleet in Nigeria. We'll be talking about giving her a warning. Now, that's not a hug, folks. That's a broadside. And not a broadside like Isaiah Thomas collected. That means a whole bunch of cannons firing at the same time off of the side of your ship. I wish my wife, the fiddler, were here with me to bring this jig to life, but I'll do what I can without. Perry's Victory, or St. Patrick's Day in the morning.
As old Queen Charlotte, a worthless old varlet, our brave naval forces was scorning. She wished to be Mary, so called for St. Mary, September the 10th in the morning. When brisk Mary came, she found him true game, to her cost too he gave her a warning. When brisk Mary came, she found him true game, to her cost too he gave her a warning, to her cost too he gave her a warning. So let her be Mary and remember Mary, September the 10th in the morning. It was on Lake Erie when all hands were cheery, a fleet was decried in the morning. 'Twas Queen Charlotte's fleet, so handsome and neat, in bold line of battle were forming. But when evening came, though the fleet were the same, that our brave naval forces were scorning. When evening came, though the fleet were the same, that our brave naval forces were scorning, that our brave naval forces were scorning. They were beaten so complete that they yielded their fleet to the one they despised in the morning. So let us remember the 10th of September, when Yankees gave Britons a warning. Our foes on Lake Erie were beaten and weary, full of conceit in the morning. To the skillful and brave who our country did save, our gratitude ought to be warning. Skillful and brave who our country did save, our gratitude ought to be warning. Our gratitude ought to be warning. So let us be merry in toasting of Harry, September the 10th in the morning. In the interest of time and the inevitability of me taking much longer to get through an hour program than I was expecting, I'm going to catapult past the next piece of the program. It's fun, but it's not as good as the stuff we have. So, pardon my talkativeness. I just happen to like this stuff a lot. I think it's really interesting. I get carried away with it. So, let's scoot straight down to really what brings us now into the climax, at least from my perspective. In a lot of ways, the battle down in New Orleans was almost a coda to what happened to the British when they attempted to take Baltimore. Remember, they had successfully marched in and burned public buildings in Washington, D.C. The people in Baltimore had plenty of time. They knew they were next. I lived just south of Baltimore, and I'm very, very aware of the local history there. Baltimore was one of the prime shipbuilding areas for privateers. And the British did not like privateers. You guys know that up here in New England, I'm sure. So we knew that they were going to try to take Baltimore. We knew they would attack by land and by sea, and so they did. Most famous is the sea attack, the bombardment from the rocket ships and the bomb ships for a 25-hour period overnight. But while this was going on, there were 4,000 land troops dropped off further out of view and marching their way toward Baltimore City. They too were repelled. In fact, their leader, General Ross, was killed by a sharpshooter. Ross liked to ride around in his red coat with a sword at the front of his troops. So, what can you say? Well, so what I'm going to share with you next is the Battle of Baltimore. You see a manuscript copy of it on the upper right-hand side. You probably can't read much from there. But this was copied in 1823, and it proves that somebody was still enough interested in this song about the Battle of Baltimore that he took either a broadside or a songster
and he copied out word for word on his own sheet of paper. This is our other Yankee Doodle. And what's very clever about it is that it contains the references to the land attack failing, the sea attack failing, not just the killing of General Ross, but sending him home in a cask of rum, pickled for burial. So this is a lower class version of the Star Spangled Banner. That's my point. Because we have two songs. Now really, Yankee Doodle, a gentleman doesn't do anything with Yankee Doodle. I mean, that's a low song, folks. And so, but what's interesting is Francis Scott Key will take the high road, and he will speak in poetically. He will speak in important sweeping gestures. He'll have a few details, but he will never get into these kinds of verses. So the chorus for you this time will be Yankee Doodle beat the drum, Yankee Doodle dandy, and if by day or night they come, they'll always find us handy. Because they came through day. I'll do a pair of verses, and then of course, pair of verses, chorus. See if you can figure out what an iron fiddle is by the end of this also.
Come all ye brave Americans and join the song of glory, all ye that fought so brave of late and drove them on before ye. When Ross made his approach on land and Coburn on the water, they thought they'd play into their hand without attempted slaughter. Yankee Doodle beat the drum, Yankee Doodle dandy, and if by day or night they come, they'll always find us handy. We'll try once more. Yankee Doodle beat the drum, Yankee Doodle dandy, and if by day or night they come, they'll always find us handy. When Coburn passed the fort below and Ross had passed the point, sir, he gave 3 cheers to let Ross know that he was not behind, sir. Now Coburn, if you come again to visit us at night, sir, don't cry hurrah before you know that you're exactly right, sir. Yankee Doodle beat the drum, Yankee Doodle dandy, and if by day or night they come, they'll always find us handy. And Ross the same advice might take, but since with rum he's blind to serve, his army may depend that Smith is not like General Winder. We've powder plenty, grape shot too, so have we men to have them. Musket balls, we have a few, we're sure you cannot stand them. Yankee Doodle beat the drum, Yankee Doodle dandy. If by day or night they come, they'll always find us handy. If Coburn, Cochrane, or Lord Hill again our town will visit, we hope our soldiers will have skill enough to make them listen. And if our lordships will advance, our fear will be but little. We'll surely play a soldier's dance upon our iron fiddle. Yankee Doodle beat the drum, Yankee Doodle dandy. And if by day or night they come, they'll always find us handy. Then let's unite by land and sea, may victory crown our navy. And if like Ross they'll come, we'll stand and drive them to Old Davy. Therefore, ye brave Americans, come in the song of glory. Fight as ye have fought of late to drive them on before ye. Yankee Doodle beat the drum, Yankee Doodle dandy, and if by day or night they come, they'll always find us handy.
Okay, now think back for a second. Beyond this depiction, in the foreground is Fort McHenry. There's a 25-hour bombardment this night of September 23rd to 24th, 1814. What you see close up are the bomb ships and rocket ships. Further, way out of sight, almost 4 miles away, are the other ships, the troop ships, and the American ship on which Francis Scott Key was put. He was not on a British ship. He was not writing a poem. He was not looking at the flag that's in the Smithsonian. Because the flag is, this is a dramatized view. The flag that was flying overnight in the rain and the wind was the Storm flag built by Mary Pickersgill. She's the one who also built Old Glory with help. Didn't do it by herself. Betsy Ross didn't do it, by the way. So many people think that Betsy Ross came as first family. Keep your regional straight, please. The point is that Francis Scott Key was way out of the picture. He was a gentleman, lawyer, who had been brought along with an authorized prisoner exchange officer from the American Army to meet and try to secure the release of one particular prisoner. And Scott Key had sailed out days before in encountered the British fleet way down the bay, 60 miles away. And they met with the Brits, they talked them into the release, but they said, well, we can't let you go, because you know where we're going next is Baltimore, and you'll go to shore and tell everybody. So we're going to keep you on your ship under guard, and that's where Francis Scott Key was. Now, when people say that he wrote a poem, it's just not true. He certainly wasn't writing in the back of an envelope, because envelopes weren't invented in 1814. People folded letters about them themselves, or backs of themselves. What Francis Scott Key was doing was mulling over a song. Remember I mentioned before, he'd already written one song to the tune we know as Instruction in the Band for Stephen Decatur in 1804. Let's find out a little bit more about this one. Where did it come from? We have to go back to gentlemen's clubs. This is my favorite from my town of Annapolis, Maryland, mid-1750s. These are a bunch of guys. These are immigrant doctors, lawyers, ministers, merchants, who formed a club they called the Tuesday Club in 1745. Dr. Alexander Hamilton was president of the club for a long time. He traveled up into these parts before he founded the club. These guys were musicians. They gathered twice a month. They would eat, they would drink, they would discuss current events, business affairs, play lots of music. They were very talented musicians, both in what we would consider classic and Baroque style music, and also Irish jigs and folk songs and much lighter stuff. These clubs, this club tradition lives on today. One of my favorites in London is the Sublime Society of Beefsteak. I take it they have no vegetarian members. This is a photograph of not that long ago. They continue to meet. They have since 1735 on Drury Lane, above the theaters. They had royalty amongst their membership. Same sort of thing, except a little more upper class here, aren't they? Instead of wandering the streets in this pencil drawing, trying to wake up, I'm sorry, wait. These are the Tuesday Club guys in Annapolis wandering informally, trying to wake up the sheriff to come drink with them. These guys have ancient classic silver and crystal, beautiful antique furniture, and they are truly an upper-class gentleman's club. And that's why we need to know about Anacreon. Anacreon was a 5th century BC poet. He wrote his poems about women and wine. His works were rediscovered as part of the overall rediscovery of ancient antiquity in the 18th century. Vesuvius had buried Pompeii when Pompeii was dug up, and interest in monasteries were visited. All of a sudden we realized there's this whole classical world we didn't know about. This was back in the 18th century. Anacreon, the songs of Anacreon were published. They were very lewd. I would not make a song from Anacreon for you. Which was kind of the Hugh Hefner of his day, is the way my wife likes to put it. So anyway, a new club in London, around 1765-66, right in there, decided to form itself, start a club, and name themselves after him. They called themselves the Anacreontic Society. The president wrote a poem. Then they hired John Stafford Smith, or hired or invited him. We're not sure. He was a young man at the time. He became quite notable. In fact, this plaque is posted in Westminster Abbey. You have to be a pretty good musician to end up with a plaque in Westminster Abbey. So Stafford Smith, the last line of his plaque reads, "He will long be remembered as composer of the tune of the national anthem of the United States of America." I'm not sure when the plaque was installed. Would have to, if it's literal, it would have to be after 1931, because that's when we made the Star Spangled Banner the official national anthem. So anyway, here's the first published sheet music of the Anacreontic song. This is the club song with a melody that goes like this. Here's the first verse. To Anacreon in heaven, where he sat in full glee, a few sons of harmony sent a petition that he their inspirer and patron should be. When this answer arrived from that jolly old Grecian, voice, fiddle, and flute no longer be mute. I'll lend you my name and inspire you to boot. And besides, I'll instruct you like me to entwine the myrtle of Venus with Bacchus's vine. And if I had the second page, you'd see that those last two lines I just sang are repeated as a 4-part chorus by everybody gathered. So they join in, and besides I'll instruct you like me to entwine. So yes, our national anthem is based on an English drinking song. But hopefully,
hopefully over the last hour, you got the idea that people use and reuse melodies. Irish jigs, songs about John Anderson, My Joe, Yankee Doodle, My Country 'Tis of Thee, actually, is a parody of God Save the King. Yes. So the idea of reusing an old melody, putting it to an important national purpose, there's nothing wrong with it. It does cause us to chuckle sometimes. But many people misunderstand where the song came from. It's not a drinking song like, what to do with a drunken sailor, what to do. It's not that kind of drinking song. It's an upper class drinking song. And we can be proud of that. Okay, so how did Americans learn this song? Parodies appear quickly after the anacreontic song, or to anacreon heaven, is published. And one of the most important, probably the most important, is called Anthems and Liberty, or the Boston Patriotic Song, 1798. Right about this time, possibly before, was published by a woman in Boston, a song to honor George Washington's birthday. One of his last birthdays, once in a while. So Americans then, they don't care so much about Anacreon, and they don't care about the Greek and the Roman and all the gods and goddesses and whatever, but listen to some of the words that go along with Anthems and Liberty. This is just the first verse. Ye sons of Columbia, who bravely have fought for those rights which unstained from your sires have descended, may you long taste the blessings your valor has bought, and your sons reap the soil which your fathers defended. Mid the reign of mild peace may your nation increase, with the glory of Rome and the wisdom of Greece. And ne'er may the sons of Columbia be slaves, while the earth bears up let or the sea rolls its waves, never will join and ne'er may the sons, etc., as a chorus afterwards. This song took off. It was a hit. Within 6 years, Francis Scott Key writes a song for Decatur. Look here at the third verse of Francis Scott Key's song for Decatur. Kind of jumps out at you in red, doesn't it? And he refers to the light of the star-spangled flag of our nation. And what's wave and brave referring to? Well, his was a song of peace in 1805. The Barbary Wars were over. So it's the laurel and the olive branch that are waving from the grave. This is what was going through his mind 9 years later. He was thinking of these earlier songs. He knew the tune. He'd written it once before. Here's what Isaiah Thomas collected just before. This is the summer of 1814, months before Francis Scott Key is aboard his ship watching the rocks. This is, notice the attribution. It says, Columbia and Independence, a new patriotic song dedicated to every freeborn American, tune, Anthems and Liberty. They don't even call the tune Anacreon in Heaven anymore. They call it Anthems and Liberty because the new words for Anthems have come to represent that melody. Here's some of these words, and I'm about to close on this. Columbians arouse and attend to the call of heaven-born freedom and act with decision. No longer let tyrants your birthright enthrall, but form a bright union, a firm coalition. In a brotherly band united will stand, no despot shall lord it o'er this our dear land. And long shall our nation with gladness proclaim the ardor which kindles at liberty's name. Now you wonder if that was designed to be sung again by people gathered, as the old drinking song was. It says chorus. It tells you right there in the broadside. That's how these songs were done. And most likely, that's how Francis Scott Key's version of it was done. The very last verse on this broadside refers to not be doomed from a tyrant to suffer pollution. Do you know the last verse of the Star-Spangled Banner? Refers to their foul footsteps pollution. So Francis Scott Key, God bless him, he was a poet, he wrote lots of other poems. But the defense of Fort McHenry, which later became named the Star-Spangled Banner, was not a poem, it was a song. And it was not a single work of inspiration. It was the collective climax of dozens and dozens. In fact, over 85 different texts have been traced to this melody before 1820. That's how popular the tune was.
Here's the original. You have, in the display case behind you, a very early edition of the Star-Spangled Banner, as Scott Key's words were laid under the Anacreon's tune. It's a Philadelphia imprint. I'm not sure precisely how it dates, but I do know that what you're looking at here is the very first edition. There's a typo, because it's entitled The Star-Spangled Banner, a Patriotic Song. I think they missed a T. But something interesting occurs in this version. I don't know if you noticed in my singing, I still haven't done that typical opening melodic gesture of la 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 la, right? The song wasn't like that then. It starts at the bottom. It doesn't start on a descending arpeggio. Ya da 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 da. It starts at the bottom. Da 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 da. And it also used to go ya da 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 da. It's kind of hard to sing. It's a whole step there between the F and G. Starting with this edition, 1814 Baltimore in November, it introduced as an F sharp. So finally we have ya da 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 da. This is the way people sing today. Well, some people, not a football game, that's for sure. So anyway, a lot of this you will have a chance to see on your televisions next summer, if you're interested. Anthem, music of the war, 1812, the Star-Spangled Banner, the whole story, including a wonderful interview with one of those guys in the blue coats of the Beefsteak Society. We went over to England and had a chat with Count Nikolai Tolstoy, and had him sing some of his songs for us. With this, I would love to bring to a close the formal program. I know I went a little bit over, I'm sorry, but thank you.